How's it going, guys? It's Avi from Earth's 1000. Today is August 21st, 2020. Today, this will be a short update video on Tropical Storm Laura, which just formed, I think, earlier this morning, very early this morning. And it's currently a 45-mile-per-hour storm with its central millibar pressure down to 1,003 millibars. I'm not entirely sure, but it's still pretty high, the pressure, despite being 45 miles per hour. And you see, based off the overall composition of this storm, you see that it doesn't look very organized. You see that there's a lot of the outflow. Clouds are flowing towards the north and east of this storm, which is showing that there's a little bit of wind shear that's pretty much slowing down its potential developing phase, and it's really taking a toll on this storm's overall composition and strength, as we're seeing for the most part, we're seeing those clouds mainly struggle to move towards the south due to this wind shear. But however, it isn't a ton to where it will break this storm apart as of right now. And this wind shear is as a result of this upper level low that's currently to north and east of it. And while we're seeing a lot of convection, there isn't really a ton of convection either. We're still seeing pockets of dry air entrain this storm a little bit. There's going to be some phases where it looks more organized, but others where it looks like it's on life support, which is usual for tropical cyclones that are dealing with dry air. And this dry air is expected to continue to hinder it from developing over the next several days, and that's definitely important to keep in mind when it comes to strength forecast, as it's still uncertain whether this could even strengthen in the future as a result of the dry air. If we take a look at the GFS model and its forecast when it comes to relative humidity between the 400 and 7, oh man, hold on. Alright guys, I apologize for that pause right there. My Wi-Fi suddenly went out on me during the video, but if we continue to move forward, you see that in front of this storm, there's a lot of dry air located just to the front of this storm as of right now, and that's gonna hinder it from developing to the point where the GFS doesn't even develop this thing. However, the National Hurricane Center forecast is still predicting that this storm will mainly maintain its strength. However, the recent update put the track a little bit more further south, which could be good news, because that could completely kill off the storm, since this storm's going to go over, potentially over the high terrain of Dominican Republic, Haiti, Costa Rica, Cuba, my bad, and Puerto Rico. So yeah, there's a possibility that this storm could completely die out. I won't rule it out. However, I think the reason why the National Hurricane Center is still maintaining its forecast that this will maintain its strength is that it won't deal with that much wind shear, despite the dry air that's going to be in front of it. If we take a look at the wind shear forecast for the GFS, there isn't a ton of wind shear that would slow this thing down in the future, which I think is the reason why the National Hurricane Center is more favorable of eventually developing this thing. Because if we move on to Sunday, you see that the wind shear is fairly light in this region. We do have a little bit of bouts of wind shear as a result of this upper level low that's located towards the Panama region. However, it isn't enough to really slow this thing down. And moving on to Monday, we see that the wind shear is there's pretty much little to no wind shear. So this is why the National Hurricane Center also develops it really late into a hurricane. And while the computer models aren't leaning towards this developing, the National Hurricane Center is as a result of light wind shear. However, there's still that possibility this could completely die off as a result of the land interaction over the Caribbean islands and the dry air that's going to be in front of it. However, we still had to see what happens with it. If I were to take a guess, I would say that this will maintain its strength and maybe develop into something bigger as it heads to the Gulf Coast, because while it will interact with land and there will be some dry air, I expect a small circulation of this storm to fend off some of that dry air. And I don't think there will be enough dry air or wind shear to really prevent this thing from ever dying out. So I would expect that this will strengthen as it heads to the Gulf Coast. However, keep in mind there's still that possibility it hits land and then completely dies out by the dry air and wind shear like the GFS model is favoring. So in the Caribbean islands though, I would prepare for tropical storm force conditions. Like I said, impacts won't be major. However, you can't underestimate these tropical storms either because they do dump a lot of rain. While this is unlikely to dump a lot of rain like other tropical cyclones, since like I said, there's a lot of dry air that's going to entrain it and there's no real center of convection within this storm, but it's still enough to maybe cause some localized flooding and flash flooding throughout the Caribbean islands. So definitely keep that in mind. If pretty much from Puerto Rico to Dominican Republic, Haiti, and even up north towards Cuba, it seems like we are going to experience some type of tropical storm force conditions in your areas. And as for Florida, the US, you definitely need to pay very close attention to this, because not one, but in fact 2 tropical cyclones have a chance to come close and pretty much make landfall almost at the exact same area. So this is quite an unusual situation, because when we're talking about 2 tropical cyclones making landfall potentially on the same day at potentially very close in proximity areas, that means that some areas might just be trapped. Let's say like you're in the Gulf Coast of Mississippi. If you move on, try to evacuate to the west, then you might deal with tropical depression 14. However, if you try to evacuate to the west as well, the east as well, you might experience Hurricane Laura, which is quite unusual for this to happen. So definitely keep that in mind along the Gulf Coast, since you're probably under very high alert for tropical cyclone development. And moving on to still tropical depression 14, which is a current water vapor imagery of the Atlantic, and you see that this is tropical depression 14, and I'll admit it looks a lot less organized than it was yesterday, and it's as a result of this huge trough that's just dipping down and dominating the Gulf of Mexico right now, bringing a lot of wind shear, and on the backside of this dry air. And this dry air might be the key reason why this tropical depression 14 likely won't rapidly develop as it moves up the Gulf Coast, thankfully. However, it's still currently expected to become a hurricane, and even the computer models are favoring this of strengthening potentially into a strong tropical storm or hurricane in the future, despite the dry air and the wind shear that's currently over the Gulf of Mexico. And the reason why is because later during the week, we're going to see this ridge build just to the east of Florida, and that ridge will force this trough a little bit up more north, to the point where the dry air will be a lot more limited, the wind shear will be a lot more limited, and tropical depression 14 might have an open lane to redevelop over the Gulf of Mexico over the next several days. Because if we take a look at the GFS model forecast, this tropical depression 14, which is located just off the coast of the Yucatan Peninsula, if we move forward several days, you see that trough is currently dominating the Gulf of Mexico with strong upper level winds, which the water vapor imagery is clearly showing. However, if we move on to Friday and Saturday, and especially Sunday, we start to see a ridge build in this region, and that's going to force these upper level winds up north to the point where it's likely that tropical depression 14 won't deal with that much wind shear besides to the north of it. And even if it does feel a lot of these upper level winds are moving from the south to the north, it's like these upper level winds are likely to enhance this storm with maybe a little bit of instability, and also winds to the east of this storm. So we definitely need to take a look out for that as of over the next several days. But it seems like this wind shear will eventually die down as we move on over the next several days. While the GFS is taking a mainly weaker storm, we're still expecting potentially a hurricane making landfall somewhere between Texas and Louisiana. So definitely keep in mind that. However, the reason why the GFS is likely weakening this storm is because of the dry air that this trough is going to leave behind, because you see the abundance of dry air over here. If we move more over the next several days, you see the dry air is going to start to entrain it on the backside of this storm, which could hinder it from really developing into anything major like a hurricane. So the dry air is definitely something to keep in mind. But I would say the entire Gulf Coast as of right now needs to pay attention to this, because it's becoming likely you're going to experience some type of tropical storm, whether you're from Texas all the way to Florida, whether it's Tropical Storm Laura or Tropical Depression 14. It's likely you're going to experience some type of impacts from either of these tropical cyclones, which could make landfall on the same day. So definitely keep that in mind all throughout the Gulf Coast heading into next week, and especially into Tuesday and Wednesday of next week, as it's likely that you're going to experience some rain with this. At this point, it's still uncertain whether this will become a hurricane or tropical storm. However, I would say with confidence that you will experience an enhanced chance of rainfall as we head into next week. But anyways, guys, I thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you like this content. Make sure to like if you like this content, and make sure to share with friends and family who are interested. And I hope you guys have a good day.